you point out, you've got a psychopath rise to the top of these things problem.
Yeah.
Which I wanted to go back.
Well, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that that's what Mamdani's doing. And I don't know if what he's doing will be balanced out by other people and overall be more beneficial to people that live in New York City that have lower income or not. But my point is, you should keep going down that road. There's a lot of socialism things that I think would benefit us.
So I just wanted to play this just to point out. This is a great interview. Love Joe Rogan. Love Brett Weinstein. This is about an hour into the interview. Joe, again, I just feel like he just doesn't quite have it yet on the issue of socialism versus capitalism versus like whatever. Like Joe is a very idealistic man. Seems like a very nice guy, but at the end of the day, he's got a lot of fucking money. He's extremely wealthy, and he's been extremely wealthy for a long, long time. So it's very easy to kind of get lost in the weeds when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Not to say that, again, he's known a lot of people, he's seen a lot of stuff, but I still just think he misses the mark when it comes to these types of issues. And it's really important to point it out because he is probably one of the most prominent figures, period. I mean, you could just say full stop, I mean, his audience is one of the biggest audiences maybe that has ever existed, as far as we know. So, I just like to point out and show where I think he's going wrong in his thinking. I don't think Brett really addresses it too much because, again, that's the other problem with Joe at this point, at this level of the game, is that no one's going to really go on them and press him. No one's going to really go on them. And Joe did a lot of talking on this episode. He went on for quite a while on a lot of different tangents. And if you're sitting there on the largest platform in the world, the last thing you're going to want to do is say, well, and just get into his face and just start going at him. So, I can understand where everyone's coming from when it comes to Rogan. Just the size of him, the size of his reach is something you don't want to really come down on him because of the consequences that may come at you. You may not be invited back. But I'm just hoping that somewhere along the line, he gets the message that his method of thinking in this regard is not correct.
Socialized medicine, socialized education. I think that would probably benefit us. But
You see, it wouldn't benefit us. And you know how we know that? Because that's what we have. What we have right now. Essentially, the entire education system is a socialized system. I mean, people, my neighbors that haven't had children in God knows how long, all their kids they have grandkids at this point. They're still paying school taxes to fund schools that are, not the best. They're pretty good because of where I live, because I chose to move into an area that had really good schools. But in the end, I mean, think about it like this. One of the top private schools is relatively close to me. And I think it costs around $40,000 a year to send a child to that private school. New York State allots $35,000 per student per child within school. So the state pays $35,000 per child. A school that I would love to send my boys to, but I can't because I can't afford it, costs $40,000 a year. So if they just gave me that money, I could just give it to them, and they would have a much better education than they're currently getting now. But that's what you get. It's a socialized system. It is subpar. It is the unions are the unions control it pretty much in its entirety. You can't fire teachers. The rigmarole that you have to go through. The amount of upper echelon when it comes to staffing, the whether it's HR or human resources, like all of these things that go into play when you have a massive system like this. It's a massive, massive, massive bureaucracy, and people just leech off of the system. That's what you get when you get a socialized system. You don't get meritocracy. You don't get the merit-based system that everyone wants, that Joe always says he wants. Like I said, he just misses the mark.
I also think there's a real value in competition.
Well,
it's important. All these things are important for us to succeed.
I've come to think of socialism as a system. It's insane. It's self-unstable. It destroys the goose that lays the golden eggs.
But it sounds so good and compassionate, especially when you're young.
Right. It doesn't mean that it's not as an ingredient. There are some times when you need more of it, right? Mm-hmm. I'm very happy with the fact that, it stopped working in blue states where it's been mismanaged. But the fact that you can call 911 when you have a medical emergency or when somebody's,
Yes.
busting down the door of your house, that's a very good thing. I'm perfectly happy to pay my share and not use it and not use it and not use it so that it's there if I need it. Right. So that's good stuff.
See, and again, I love Brett also. Super smart guy. His Dark Horse podcast is is an amazing podcast. You guys should check it out. But again, these things that we call socialized systems or socialized resources or whatever it is you want to call them. I don't like to call, I disagree. I just think it is something put in place where we have all voted as a society to say, yeah, okay, we'll all pull in some money together and get that. I mean, if you want to call that a sector of socialism, I don't really see it as that. I see it like as a collective gathering of individuals that choose a service that they all pull together and basically buy. Like we're buying that. We buy public safety with our tax dollars. You know, I guess it's kind of like a social system because at this point, you know, even if we wanted to opt out of it, I guess you can. You could just move really far away, and then you're kind of opting out of it.
The goose that lays the golden eggs is the disproportionate reward for creating wealth, right? That's what the system is based on. If I can find a way to create wealth, then I get to live in a better house, right? I get to drive a nicer car. So it's an incentive to do that. And the problem is that with all of the great fortunes, they are a mixture of the product of producing wealth and the creation of externalities and the engagement in rent seeking. So rent seeking is the production of profit without producing wealth. And I think it is impossible to compete in that stratospheric level simply by producing wealth. At the point that you have a huge amount of wealth, you're investing in things. Those things are not inherently on the up and up. You're investing in the things that pay the highest returns. What are the things that pay the highest returns? They may be things that are, you know, selling dangerous drugs to the public, that sort of thing. So what you really want, a system that worked, would liberate us to compete. It would not worry at all about being disproportionately rewarded. And it would stamp out the rent-seeking behavior that is counterproductive. Because, you know, all of the money that is accumulated by an extremely wealthy individual as a result of rent seeking is incentive that didn't go to other people to get them to produce wealth. You really want all of that gone, right? So that all of the reward goes to people who are producing wealth. That makes us all richer. Now, you're never going to get to that perfectly. You're never going to completely eliminate rent seeking, but we have a system that just rewards it. And that
How are you defining rent seeking?
Rent seeking, as economists define it, is the production of profit without generating wealth. Right. So, you know, by blocking access to something and then charging people for it, by, you know, selling people a subscription to something that they want access to now when they're going to forget that they're paying for it on a monthly basis and continue to pay even though they're not using the service, that kind of thing.
Right.
So that behavior is counterproductive because it keeps incentive that should go to somebody else who's producing something valuable out of the system. Basically, you are hoarding the profits and only some fraction of what you're producing is productive. And
Right.
it's bad for all of us. But the other thing is it creates the exact resentment that results in these outbreaks of communist sentiment, right? Because it freezes so many people out of any prospect of having a cool life that they have no incentive to keep the system going. And what they want is to use their vote to get the system to redistribute stuff in their direction. And they're not entirely wrong that their lack of stuff is the result of some bad behavior on the part of others, right? If the market just simply restricted people to wealth-producing behavior and said, I don't care how rich you get, but you shouldn't get rich for harming other people. If it did that, it distributed the incentive as widely as possible, nobody would be interested in communism, right? It only happens because we are deaf to the admittedly inarticulate complaints of the people who are shafted in the system. They're not making their case well. And their real point is, well, if you're going to do that to me in the market, then I'm going to do this to you at the ballot box.
Makes sense. The argument for having some sort of I don't think there's anything wrong with the way you have to pay to go to college. I think it makes sense that the professor should make a lot of money. It makes sense that we should encourage higher learning. Right? It's important that it thrives, right? But if it was funded by the government, if everybody could get a higher education, just think of the money we spend with things. Like
And again, so here's where I might one day have the opportunity to, and if I do, something I would like to discuss with him. If everyone gets a higher education, what is a higher education worth? Shit. It's worth shit. It's worth less, right? If everyone has the thing is no longer worth what it once was. I mean, what I would say is maybe 10 to 15% of people should be getting a higher education. It absolutely should not. I mean, if you wanted to say this, if you wanted to have it somewhat socialized, I would only be okay with it on one condition. On the condition that if I'm going to pay my tax money and have other people attend a university, I just want 10% to 15% of people going to university, number one. Number two, obviously it needs to be 100% merit-based. Number three, we as a society need to choose the majors, right? I don't want, listen, as somebody who, you know, we'll dive deeper into my background back in the day, but yeah, I did theater back in the day. Like, would I want somebody to have a theater major on the dole Absolutely not. It's the stupidest thing ever. Any job where you only require, for the most part, experience, which is the majority of jobs. There are very few conditions. The only other jobs that where, and even even when engineering and mathematics and the STEM field, the majority of the time, those also only require experience. What the university does is it pushes you to the limit to see if you're willing and you have the capability to get to that level. Right, a lot of these engineering degrees, you don't just come out with with an electrical engineering degree and then you start working at a firm and you like know what you're doing. The degree is their foot in the door. It's like, all right, you went through a lot of shit to get this, and you're super smart because you got this. Therefore, we are not going to employ you and give you the opportunity to really show what you can do. In Joe's mind, Joe's like, well, if everyone has it, then people don't have to pay. And, he gets into this very, very fairy tale like idea of thinking.
How much more money would people have to spend if they weren't burdened by debt? And couldn't we offset that? Like, forget about even absolving student debt. Just like from now on, if we just funded higher education, if that was a mandate to fund higher education, think about how many more people would enter into the job market, how many more people would get educations, how many more people would pursue various different interests that they discovered while they
that's exactly what's happening now. Nobody pays for college now. Who's paying for college? I tell you who's paying for college. People that are like upper middle class, like they're footing the bill for their kids. I'm not doing that. I'm absolutely not doing that. I basically told the older guys, the older ones, you could do military, you could do trade school. If you're gonna do something in STEM or whatever, I will break my balls putting you through college. But if you're not doing that, it ain't happening. You're gonna have to go it on your own, and I don't want it. I didn't want it. I don't want them to take the burden of these loans to get a meaningless degree in order for them to what? To get out of school 4 years later, make $35,000 a year in something they didn't even study in. It's retarded. Higher education at this point for 85% of the people that are in it is stupid. And until we realize that, and until we have the ability to tell our children that, it's going to continue to foster and it's going to continue to grow. And it's just a racket. It's an absolute racket. Right? So for Joe to say that, oh, imagine how many kids would go to school if they didn't have to pay for it. They're not paying for it now either. They're taking out the loans, then paying for it. They're not thinking about like, what's my interest rate going to be? How much am I going to have to pay back? You think an 18-year-old is thinking about like the long-term finances of some random piece of paper that he's signing right now? He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't know. He barely has a credit card. And you're saying, yeah, sign here. We're going to give you a couple $100,000. Don't worry about it, bro. You'll pay it down the line. Don't worry about it. What's he going to do? Hell yeah. Going to sign on the dotted line, get a couple checks, go to school for free, party, and hang out. That's what he's going to do. So it's already essentially free. And they're still doing it. They're all doing it. And they all suck. It all sucks.
They were learning, and that they would never have had access to that education before because they couldn't afford it. As a resource, like human beings are our greatest resource. And a country with the least amount of losers is a better country.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you want to make America great again, let's make less losers. Like, what's the best way to make less losers? You got to give people hope. You got to give people education. You got to give people.
Oh my God, he still sounds like an absolute lefty. I know he is, but it's just one of those things where you would have hoped that somebody that sat down with all of these amazing minds that would have like he would have been past this point, and he's not, and it's frustrating because I like him.
People a real pathway, and instead you get non-interested people that can't control unruly kids, and you're barely paying attention to the lessons, and no one's motivated because no one's making any money, and you go through this system where you can barely read and you're graduating high school, and now you're off into the world and you're fucking lost because no one gave you any real guidance or any real usable education. And that's a giant swath of the population. And it feels like that could be fixed. That could be fixed with resources. That could be fixed if you directed people like
resources. That can be fixed with resources. So money. So $35,000 a year in New York State isn't enough. I mean, what do you need? $50,000, $100,000 a year per student? What is enough? Like, what is enough? I would just love to sit down with him and ask him how, like, if he could just throw out a number. What do you think the average student, like the average school, is getting per student? It's fucking insane. Insane. We're throwing a ton of resources at it. We're throwing a ton of money at it, and we're not getting the results because it's government run. You look at the charter schools. I don't know if people understand the way charter schools. So essentially the way charter schools work in the state of New York, it is public money, but it's much less. I believe, depending upon the school, it's around half of what a normal school gets, maybe less, maybe a third. So let's say, for example, a kid in a really shitty public school in New York City, that school is getting $35,000 per student, between $30,000 and $35,000 per student. In a charter school, they'll be getting like 10. And they're way outperforming, by levels of magnitude, the majority of public schools in the city. So what does that mean? Does that mean, is it a resource issue? Is it a funding issue? No. Guess what charter schools can do that public schools can't? They can fire teachers. They can get rid of staff. They can move people around. They can say, you know what? You're not performing well. Either you fix it or you're gone. Public schools cannot do that. They cannot do that. They have rubber rooms for teachers. Meaning that if you're just the shittiest of all shit teachers, they say, listen, Frank, you're not going to teach like ever. Just come to work. Just sit here in this room. You know, you can go on your computer or whatever and just like check emails and shit like that. And we're still going to pay you $100 and whatever $1,000 a year. Just because in order to fire you would cost us about $5 million in legal, like backwards and forth and fighting and going, you know, unless you like touch the kid, you're pretty much, you're not going anywhere. You could be the worst teacher known to man, and you will still be able to maintain your job in a New York City public school as long as you have your tenure. You're not going anywhere. That's the issue. We cannot fire shitty teachers.
But as a job, it's not attractive to people that want to make a lot of money. You can't, it's capped. It's one of the most important jobs that ever exists for you as a person is your interaction with.
What do you guys think one of the most important jobs is? By the way, if you're still here, please subscribe to the channel. One of the most important jobs is probably being a parent. I mean, I guess, you know, that's kind of like a throwaway. But not being a teacher. One of the most important jobs is not being a teacher. Now, if education was handled appropriately and correctly, then maybe if kids were learning life skills, if kids were learning finances, if kids were learning, you know, things that they can actually use day to day, then maybe it would be. Reading, writing, arithmetic, penmanship, proper English. Those are things that I could see, you know, putting a stamp of approval and saying, yeah, this is absolutely worth it. I mean, what we have now, the majority of our education system is just, one is daycare for the younger kids. That's all it is. It's so that mommy and daddy can both go to work, which is why I didn't put my children into school until they were mandated to go to school. And, you know, the other is money laundering, funding, just money. Teachers making money, school officials making money, upper echelons of the, you know, the superintendent, all the minions that they have. It is just a massive money printing machine. That's what education is. Guys, we're almost going to wrap it up here. Please hit the subscribe button if you're still here. He just finishes up a little bit right here. We'll just finish it off.
A person who's going to teach you something when you're a child, it's like one of the most important things you could ever experience. And we fund it so poorly. It's almost like there's people in this country, they want to, like, no fucking way do you get to join in. You just stay with your shitty schools, in your shitty towns, with your shitty crime rates, and we're going to pretend there's nothing wrong. And that's what's going on. And if socialism has a point, like if there is like a broader way of distributing things, like we do with the fire department, like instead of capping it out at that, how about look at all the problems we have in this country and put together a fucking game plan instead of just letting it exist like some weird fucking cancer that you just ignore because you hope it goes away. It's not going away. It's been like this forever. Fix that. Or come up with some kind of a plan. That's the best way to make America great, right?
Well, I'm gonna agree with you in one regard and disagree with you slightly in another. Okay.
I don't actually think he lets him finish his conversation here, but let's see if he lets Brett finish up.
Regard is You absolutely need a system that does not produce an abundance of losers, because they will overthrow your system. Okay, it's a terrible thing to allow to happen, even just out of self-interest. Right? The stinginess of the right produces the communist impulses of the left.
100%.
It's a bad cycle.
And back and forth.
Yeah. As for the rest of your point, I think it's exactly right, and it's a great speech, and it's just too late.
Too late.
Yeah.
Damn.
I mean, I hate saying that. Right? I mean, I was a very
You're Mr. Glass half full.
I have some Navy SEAL friends who call me Professor Killjoy. But the problem is this. So as you know, I was a professor for 14 years. Very happy in that job. Really enjoyed it. It was so rewarding, and I feel like I did a ton of good. And anyway, it was great.
For people who don't know you, because millions of people do, but as a standalone.
All right, so I mean, he gets into Brett's past right here, which, if you don't know, amazing, super interesting story. Brett and his wife, they were professors at a university, and they got canceled. They got fired. It's a pretty big story. Super interesting. It's not in their last book that they wrote. I think it was A Hunter's Guide. I can't remember. I'm halfway through that one. But guys, check out the podcast. It's pretty good. Brett is always a great guest. Honestly, I think this was probably not one of the better ones. One of the earlier ones with Brett, where he gets into like his story and Joe kind of allows him to talk a little bit more. This is kind of it seems like, I mean, at this point now, this is just Joe shooting the shit with a friend of his. So they don't really get down into the nitty gritty and a lot of minutia. That Brett is a brilliant guy. He's an evolutionary biologist. Him and his wife. Dark Horse Podcast. If you're going to check them out, they're fantastic. But yeah, I just wish that we can get Joe on our side. Socialism does not work in any capacity, in any way. Maybe we don't have a free market now, which is why his views are skewed in the way that they are. But hopefully, one of these days, someone will get into his ear and he'll turn around. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. 6283 Talk on the X. I am John Soto, and I will see you again on the next video. Take care, guys.